When you boil it all down, for most of human history, one single question has driven everything. How do we get enough food to survive? I mean, it is the most basic challenge, right? And the different ways people have solved it, well, that's what shaped the entire world we live in today.
So I want you to imagine something. Picture yourself thousands of years ago. To make it through the year, you've got two main options. Do you pack up and follow the food, always moving to find new resources? Or do you figure out how to grow food right where you are and just stay put? Now, these aren't just simple choices. They are two totally brilliant and totally different solutions to that same basic problem of survival.
So on one path, you've got the nomadic herders, people who live a life on the move, always following their animals. And on the other path, you have the settled farmers, the ones who cracked the code of cultivating the land and building permanent homes. Two completely different ways of life, all starting from that same need to find dinner. All right, so let's dig into these two paths to survival. And to really get it, we've got to go back to where it all began. Nomadic herding really took off in places where the environment was, well, pretty tough. Think about those dry, arid lands where grass just doesn't grow in one spot all year long. Farming there? Yeah, that was pretty much impossible. So what's the solution? You move with your food source. You take your animals like goats and sheep, and you're constantly on the hunt for fresh grass and water. Your entire life is built around the needs of your herd and the rhythm of the seasons. But at the same time, in other parts of the world, usually near rivers where the soil was really rich, people cracked a totally different code: agriculture. The moment you could plant seeds and know for sure you'd get a harvest, that constant need to wander just vanished. You could build a permanent home, you could store extra food, and for the very first time, you could really, truly settle down. And this, of course, brings us to the most basic difference between these two ways of life. What was actually for dinner? We're talking herds versus harvests. Okay, so for nomads, life revolved around their animals. But here's the cool part. They didn't just pick any random animal. Nope, they chose the absolute perfect one for their specific environment. In the desert, of course, it was the camel, an animal that can go for days without water. Up in the freezing Arctic, the reindeer was king. And if you're navigating steep, rocky hills, those nimble sheep and goats are exactly what you need. And these animals were so much more than just food. They were like a walking, breathing hardware store, giving you transportation, clothes, and even the materials for your shelter. Now, for the settlers, life revolved around the harvest. They were growing staple crops like wheat and corn, things that could feed a whole lot of people. But you can't just cross your fingers and hope for rain. The absolute game changer, the key piece of tech here, was irrigation. They figured out how to build systems to bring water from rivers and lakes right to their fields. And that gave them something priceless, a stable, predictable food source. Having a different food source also means you have a completely different idea of what home even is. So let's look at how shelter defined these two worlds, from mobile tents to permanent towns.
Think about it. If you're always on the move, you can't exactly drag a stone house with you. It just doesn't work. So nomads designed these brilliant portable shelters. The most famous one is probably the yurt. It's this cool round tent made from animal skins or cloth that's stretched over a wooden frame. The whole thing is super lightweight, and you can take it apart and pack it onto an animal's back in just a couple of hours. For a nomad, home is simply wherever your herd happens to be.
Settled people, on the other hand, did the exact opposite. Since they were staying put, they built to last. Their homes were made of heavy-duty materials like stone, brick, and wood. They dug deep foundations right into the ground. These weren't just shelters for a season. These were structures meant to stand for generations. Okay, so it goes way beyond just food and shelter. These two lifestyles created completely different kinds of societies, too. Nomadic societies were typically organized around these big, flexible family groups that all traveled together. Survival was all about cooperation and being able to move quickly. But settled societies, well, they grew into organized towns and then cities. And once you have that many people in one place, you need leaders, you need laws, and you need a more formal social structure just to keep things from falling apart. And this right here led to one of the biggest changes in all of human history. See, once farmers got good enough to grow more food than their families needed, what we call a surplus, it meant that for the first time, not everybody had to be a farmer. This freed people up to specialize, to become experts at other things, like being builders or teachers or artists or shopkeepers. This whole idea is called the division of labor, and it's basically the engine that built every complex society on Earth. Now, it's really easy to picture these two groups as being totally separate, maybe even rivals. But that wasn't always the case. They actually interacted a lot. Nomads would often trade things like leather and meat to farmers, and in return, they'd get stuff they couldn't make themselves, like grain or metal tools. These trade routes were super important, helping both sides get what they needed to make life just a little bit easier. This nomadic way of life has been around for thousands and thousands of years. It's incredibly resilient. But today, it's facing some of its biggest challenges ever. Back in the day, nomads could move freely across these huge open landscapes. But the modern world, it's all carved up by national borders. And those invisible lines on a map become very real solid barriers that slice right through ancient migration paths. And if that wasn't enough, you've got to add climate change into the mix, which is making it harder and harder to reliably find water and grass for the herds. It's a really complex situation, though, because modern technology can actually help in some ways. Cell phones let herders check weather forecasts, and portable solar panels can provide electricity way out in the middle of nowhere. Some even use trucks to help move their camp. But at the same time, the pull of city life, of different jobs and opportunities, is incredibly strong. And a lot of young people are choosing to leave that traditional lifestyle behind. So let's just quickly recap and put it all together. You have the nomadic way, which is all about mobility. You get your food from herding animals, you live in portable homes, and your society is built on flexible family groups. Then you have the settled way, which is all about permanence. You get your food from farming crops, you live in permanent houses, and your society grows into organized towns with all sorts of specialized jobs. And the environmental impact? It's totally different. One lifestyle moves with the landscape, while the other completely transforms it. And this is the most important takeaway of all. Neither way of life is better than the other. They are both incredibly smart, successful adaptations that humans came up with to survive and thrive in completely different environments. It just goes to show how adaptable we really are as a species. And that leaves us with one last question to think about. Our world today is almost completely settled. And that's given us amazing things, right? Cities, technology, science, the list goes on. But as that ancient, mobile way of life continues to fade away, you have to wonder, what have we gained? But also, what might we have left behind? What skills, what knowledge, what kind of connection to the world around us is slowly disappearing?